They told me he was gone before I even saw his face. Just blood, asphalt, and one shoe lying in the rain. The same shoe I'd helped him tie that morning. People stared, no one spoke. And as I stood there, frozen under the sirens, something inside me split. The quiet part of me that once believed I'd escaped the war. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. The flashing red and blue lights painted everything in a nightmare rhythm. The street outside Easton High smelled of iron and smoke. Yellow tape twisted in the wind, murmuring like it didn't belong in daylight. I stepped under it anyway. Nobody stopped me, maybe because of my eyes. People always said soldiers carried a look that never left their faces. They were right. All I saw was the backpack, soaked through, crushed beside the curb. His name tag still attached. Logan Kingston, age 16. The forensics team tried to cover him with a sheet, but I saw the edge of a hand. Pale, stiff, lifeless. The same hand that used to wave at me from the driveway every morning. Someone whispered, he was stabbed 38 times. That number hasn't stopped echoing. A part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to run until the air tore out of my chest. But only silence came out. I had spent my life in shadows, in places where emotion got men killed. I thought I left that behind. But in that moment, I realized the shadows had followed me home. The officer in charge, Detective Julian Harper, kept his tone steady, but his eyes showed pity. Mr. Kingston, we need you to identify the body. My mouth opened, but my voice didn't. I just stepped closer. One glimpse, that's all it took. A lock of hair, the scar above his eyebrow, my boy. Julian placed a hand on my shoulder. We'll find who did this. I nodded, but didn't believe him. Because I already knew, finding wasn't the same as stopping. The drive home was a blur. Lila sat on the porch steps, wrapped in a blanket, holding her phone like a lifeline. When our eyes met, her face collapsed. She screamed and ran into my arms, trembling. What happened? They said it was a gang, but I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mind was already replaying the crime scene. Footprints, distance, angles. I was mapping it the way I used to process mission targets, tracing every pattern the human brain leaves behind when violence explodes. Inside the house, the walls looked too clean, too quiet. Every family photo was a lie, catching fake smiles and frozen light. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark and stared at the TV screen that wasn't turned on. Behind me, Lila cried herself to sleep on the couch. My hands were shaking, not from grief, but memory. Because 2 years ago, I had promised my commanding officer I'd never pick up another weapon. And now, I didn't need one. The weapon was me. Morning came like punishment. Reporters camped outside the gate. Neighbors left flowers. Even Officer Julian returned, asking the same questions with warmer words. Did Logan have enemies? Was he involved with anyone you didn't know? I shook my head each time until Julian hesitated and said, we found traces of another student's blood on the scene. We think someone tried to help him, but there's something else. He showed me a grainy still photo from a security camera. A figure, tall, hooded, standing just a few feet away while the police arrived. Not running, not hiding. Just watching. Something inside me froze. That stance, the way the man's shoulders hung relaxed, the hands hidden, it was training. Not gang behavior. Professional silence. Any idea who he is? Julian asked. No. I lied, even though my gut screamed otherwise. I saw that stance once before, in the Middle East. Only one group moved that way. And I remembered one soldier who once told me, when peace feels too quiet, trouble's already in your yard. By afternoon, I walked back to the school. The janitor was hosing down the sidewalk, trying to erase what was left of my son. But blood sticks longer than people realize, especially when it's yours. Standing there, I noticed something shimmer between the cracks, a small metallic tag. I crouched, picked it up, and turned it over. It was a fragment from a dog chain, but not military. It bore an emblem, a coiled snake over 3 letters, RTG. That wasn't gang graffiti. That was an old sigil from an experimental task force, one that was officially disbanded years ago, one that used to have me on their target lists. Suddenly, every muscle in me tightened. Maybe it wasn't random. Maybe this wasn't a gang hit at all. Maybe someone wanted me to feel it. When I got home, reporters still waited. I ignored them. Inside, Lila was on the phone, whispering urgently in the kitchen. She jumped when she saw me. "Who were you talking to?" I asked. "No one." One of Logan's teachers. Her voice trembled like a bad lie. My eyes dropped to her phone screen before she could lock it. A missed call from Dominic R. The name slammed through me like a bullet. I had seen it before, on a tactical report long ago. "Who's Dominic?" She swallowed hard. "Nobody you'd know. Just someone from church." But I knew better. That night, when she slept again, I went into the garage. My old lockbox sat on the top shelf behind years of dust and promises. The combination came back instantly. Inside were two things: my military dog tags and a black booklet marked RTG, Confidential Identity Exposure Protocols. I flipped to the first page. The same insignia, the coiled snake. I had spent a decade pretending my past didn't exist. But someone very real remembered, and they wanted payment. 3 days later, Julian called. "Mr. Kingston, the coroner confirmed multiple depths of wounds, likely different blades. We think more than one attacker, possibly initiated by a local street crew called the Brick 12. That name meant nothing to me. But when Julian described their suspected leader, tall, husky, tattoo of a black snake around his forearm, I felt my pulse slow. Ryder Thomas. He was in my file once, 8 years ago. Not a street thug then, an asset. I had trained him. The room started spinning. It wasn't just revenge. It was a message from ghosts of my own making. That evening, I revisited the crime scene again, ignoring the police tape. The weather had turned, rain sliding down my jacket, cold biting harder than guilt. Standing on that same spot, I felt like I was back in an ambush. Too many directions. Too many memories. Then the hair on my neck stood straight. That feeling soldiers never forget. Being watched. Across the street, under a flickering lamppost, someone stood still, wearing a gray hood. He didn't move until I did. Then he slowly turned and walked away into the shadows of the alley. I followed. My shoes splashed through puddles, heart beating in waves of fury and fear. But when I turned the corner, empty. Only silence. Then, from somewhere above, a voice echoed. Calm. Confident. Male. You were supposed to stay gone, Kingston. The words weren't shouted, just carried by the wind. I looked up, but all I saw was the glint of something metallic on a rooftop. Then a red dot flickered just over my shoulder. Sniper targeting laser. I stepped aside instinctively, too late to think, pure instinct. The shot missed, shattering glass behind me. By the time I reached the building, the shooter was gone. No police sirens. No witnesses. Just me, rain, and rage. Back home, I locked the door and grabbed a photo of Logan. His smile seemed endless, the kind that reminded me that life had a reason to slow down. I whispered into the dark. I left the war to raise you. Now the war came for you. Lila stirred on the couch, but didn't wake. A text buzzed on her phone. The screen lit up, a new message from Dominic. Clean the house. They're watching him. My finger froze over the phone. The message wasn't meant for me. Suddenly, everything lined up. The fear in her voice. Her secret calls. The wrong SUV parked outside the school last week. This wasn't my son getting caught in a gang fight. This was a setup. And it began inside my own home. The next morning, I drove to an old service lodge outside the city, a place where no one went except those who never wanted to be found. My contact, Grant Weston, was already there. He looked older, but his military calm hadn't aged a day. I figured I'd hear from you again someday, Grant said quietly. Word travels when blood splashes close to ghosts. I placed the dog tag fragment on the table. Recognize it. He nodded slowly. That's not street work. That's revenge disguised as chaos. I stared at him, jaw tight, eyes hollow. Find them, Grant. Every one of them. But don't touch them yet. I want to know who gave the order. He studied me for a long moment before replying. What are you planning, Kingston? I glanced toward the rain-soaked window. I'm planning to bury the war. For good this time. That night, the old me came back. Not the killer, but the strategist. I spread maps, records, and photos across the kitchen table while Lila slept upstairs. Each connection traced a path back to one name. Dominic Ruiz, street alias Dom Snake, former RTG informant turned gang mentor. The betrayal was complete, and it started inside the walls I thought were safe. Outside, thunder rolled low across the city. I looked at my reflection in the window, hollow-eyed, broken, yet alive. I whispered, "You killed my son to punish a ghost. Now that ghost is coming for you." My hand slid over the one surviving photo of Logan taped under the lamp. His face half-lit, forever 16, forever kind. And I swore, no loud promises, no wild threats. Just the kind of vow that sinks deep into a man's marrow and waits there. A quiet war had begun, one that wouldn't end with blood, but with truth. The storm didn't stop the day we buried Logan. Rain came down hard enough to blur faces. Maybe God's way of hiding how people really looked when they said they were sorry. Black umbrellas moved like insects across the cemetery, surrounding a coffin too small for silence. Lila trembled against the pastor's words while I stood still, watching the soil splash onto the wood. My brain counted every thud as if it were a heartbeat trying to crawl back. 38 times. I couldn't stop hearing that number. It carved itself into the rhythm of the rain. People whispered that I hadn't cried. They were right. The tears had dried years ago in deserts and jungles far from home. Now there was only focus, cold, sharp focus. After the service, neighbors came to the house with casseroles and prayers. I let them talk, nodding at faces I barely recognized. Their sympathy felt heavy, useless. Upstairs, Lila's crying returned in waves. Each sob twisted my stomach tighter, not from pity, from suspicion. Because every time my phone buzzed with a new lead from Julian or Grant, she flinched. Every single time. Late that night, after everyone had left, I sat in Logan's room. Still smelled like cologne and energy drinks. His football jersey hung half-folded over a chair, shoes under the bed like he'd run off, and would be back before dinner. The silence screamed. Under the desk lamp, I opened the small notebook I'd taken from his backpack. Mostly school notes. But the last page had something scratched in pencil. They said stop talking to her. They'll come for me. No name. Just fear. The next morning, Julian arrived. His eyes looked heavier than the day at the crime scene. He closed the door behind him, dropped his hat on the table, and said quietly, "Ryder Thomas made bail last night. Technicality. We tried to hold him, but I cut him off. He'll disappear." "Maybe," Julian said. "Unless someone convinces him he's not safe outside." We both knew what that meant, but he didn't say it out loud. Cops can't ask old soldiers for favors like that. Before leaving, he handed me a manila envelope. "We processed the footage around the school. You might want to see this yourself." When he left, I waited until Lila was busy in the kitchen, then opened it. Still frames spilled across the table, blurred faces, moving cars, shadows. Then one frame hit me. Logan standing by the school gate, sunlight on his hair, and an SUV nearby with tinted windows. Lila's car. My breath caught. There was no timestamp error. It was minutes before the stabbing. I walked into the kitchen, voice steady only because rage was colder than fear. "Why were you near the school that day?" She froze mid-reach for a glass. "I told you. I was home." "Then who was driving your car?" Her lips trembled. Maybe someone borrowed it." "I let Dominic." She stopped, realized what she said, and color drained from her face. Dominic. The name she swore was no one. My hands clenched. "You lent our car to the man who got our son killed?" Tears ran down her cheeks. "I didn't know. It wasn't supposed to happen like that." "Like what?" The sound of my own voice scared me. She couldn't answer. She ran upstairs, locking the bedroom door. The sound of her muffled sobbing mixed with thunder outside, a symphony of guilt and distance. I didn't follow. I just stood there staring at the fridge photo of Logan and me fishing on a summer afternoon. I'd promised him that day I'd always protect him. Now the only thing left to protect was the truth. 2 days later, the local news called it a tragic gang misunderstanding. They never mentioned the name Ryder or Dominic, or the fact that a security consultant from the Army used to live 2 streets away. Me. That's how Cover UPS start, with half the story told loudly so the other half can die quietly. Grant sent a coded message through our old channel. Meet me where the noise sleeps. That meant the abandoned warehouse district by the river. Midnight. I arrived under flickering lamps, echo of water slapping concrete. Grant leaned on an old crate, smoking. You were right, he said without small talk. Ryder Thomas isn't your typical street scum. He's funded through a front business called Nine Shore Logistics. Guess who's funneling the money? He handed me a photo. Lila, laughing with Dominic at a cafe. Date stamp 3 months before the murder. My stomach dropped. Their bodies leaned close. Too close for nice to meet you. You see where this goes? Grant asked. I didn't answer. The image was answer enough. He added, the guy behind all of this, Dominic's boss, has been untouchable. Political donors. Judges on the take. But our kind no pressure points. We can reach where law can't. I looked up at the dark skyline. Not yet. First, I want to hear it from her mouth. Be careful, brother, he murmured. You've lost enough. That night, driving home, every raindrop on the windshield looked like a reflection of my son's face. When I entered the house, Lila sat on the couch, eyes puffy, clutching a rosary she hadn't used in years. I didn't sit. I just asked softly, how long? Her voice broke. A year. It was over. I swear it was over, Adrian. He said he wanted to fix things. He promised he could make money, pay debts. I barely heard the words. My focus narrowed on one sentence. He promised he could make money. So it was greed, not love. My chest tightened, not because she cheated, but because she sold peace for comfort. And our son paid the price. I turned toward the stairs without another word. Behind me, she cried. I'm sorry, please. But I kept walking. Upstairs, I opened Logan's window, letting the wind cut through the silence. Somewhere below, a siren wailed. Maybe just another ordinary crime miles away. But all I felt was the same truth. Pain multiplies when buried alive. I whispered to the night, I'll find them, son. All of them. But not to kill them. To show them what guilt feels like when it never sleeps. The next morning, Detective Julian returned with new evidence. Lila avoided the room, pretending to clean dishes. Julian's eyes searched mine. We traced the SUV to a shell company owned by Dominic Ruiz. We've been tracking him ever since, but he vanished last night. Any idea where? None. But someone paid his bail, cash. Anonymous. Of course they did. He studied me, maybe sensing what I was about to do. Adrian, whatever you were in the past, stay that way. Let us handle this. I looked out the window at the gray street, quiet and empty. Then start handling it before more graves open. That evening, I walked alone to the cemetery again. The ground was still soft from rain. I knelt beside Logan's grave and brushed mud off the headstone. I should have protected you from her lies, kid, I murmured. From mine too. Far behind me, a car engine idled, then faded. Watching. Following. Before I left, I placed my old dog tags under his nameplate. You don't need these with me. Just keep M until I get there. When I returned to the car, I noticed a folded note under the wiper. Stop digging. Families die twice. No signature, but a faint emblem sketched in pen, coiled snake. I sat behind the wheel, hands steady for the first time in days. Because finally, I wasn't lost anymore. Now I knew exactly which ghost to chase. The war had begun quietly, and I wasn't planning to make noise until the end. It had been 7 days since Logan's funeral, but the house still smelled of lilies and candle wax. The phone stopped ringing. The reporters vanished. The silence that followed was worse than noise. It was the sound of life pretending to move on while mine refused. At dawn, I sat on the back steps, staring at the overgrown lawn. Lila stayed locked in the bedroom most of the time, barely eating, barely speaking. Across from me, Logan's dog lay near the porch, head resting on his paws, waiting for footsteps that would never come. I knew I couldn't sit any longer. Grief doesn't end. It calcifies, and I could feel it turning into something harder: focus. Before sunrise, I drove to Easton High. The campus was empty, hallways echoing with the ghost of chatter and sneakers on tile. The janitor recognized me from the funeral and said nothing, just opened the gate and nodded with respect. At the spot near the fence line, I stood again. The same place he took his last breath. The asphalt had been scrubbed clean, but blood doesn't wash out of memory. Behind me, a teacher's voice startled me. Mrs. Kendra Lyle, Logan's history teacher. She walked carefully, eyes cautious. "Mr. Kingston, you shouldn't be here. The investigation's still open." I turned. "I'm not here for the police. I'm here for truth." She studied my face for a moment, then lowered her voice. "Logan was a good kid, but he got into something during the last few months. New friends, different crowd, gang." She hesitated. "Not exactly. He mentioned meeting someone who could help your family. A man who knew his mother." The words hit like cold water. "He said that?" "Yes." He seemed conflicted, like he was protecting her. I thought it was just teen drama until he started skipping class. The day before he died, he asked for the school's security footage. Said he needed to prove something. "Prove what?" She exhaled. That she wasn't lying. I thanked her quietly and left before she could see my hands shaking. Outside, a kid in a black hoodie was leaning against the gate, watching me. Couldn't be more than 17. When I looked his way, he slipped something under his jacket and walked off fast. I called out, "Hey," but he turned the corner. I followed. Behind the cafeteria dumpsters, I found a folded piece of paper weighted with a rock. Written in smudged pencil. "Ask your wife who picked up Logan that day." The handwriting was young, maybe a classmate's. My stomach twisted. The walls were closing in, and every path led back to the same door. That night, I sat at the dining table with the house dark except for the lamp. I replayed security clips Julian had shared on my laptop. There it was, that same black SUV idling by the curb. At 3:17 p.m., Logan walked past it, paused, and leaned toward the half-open window for a second. Then he nodded and kept walking. Whoever was inside, he recognized them. The next frame showed chaos bursting into the screen, figures running, a scuffle, then nothing but blur. In the corner background, a faint reflection on a store window across the street, part of a face. A smirk frozen mid-turn. I zoomed in and felt my gut turn cold. Dominic Ruiz. The same soldier once embedded in my unit as an informant, now reduced to gang dust, and somehow tangled with my wife. I slammed the laptop shut before the rage could build too far. Upstairs, floorboards creaked. Lila was pacing again. For the first time, I wondered if she could hear everything I was uncovering, and if she was afraid for me, or of me. The following day, I went to meet Julian at the precinct. He looked tired, eyes red-rimmed from overwork. He slid a photo across the desk. We pulled an image off a store camera near the alley. 2 cars waiting before the attack. The SUV you know, and another registered under a fake name. He pointed at it. "But here's the strange part. That second car showed up again outside your home 2 nights ago." "Meaning they're watching?" He nodded grimly. "We'll post a car nearby, but off the record, Adrian, you should leave town for a while." I shook my head. "If I run, they win." Julian lowered his voice. "Whatever this is, it's bigger than one gang. Your son stumbled into something he didn't understand. And if you keep chasing it, you might not come back." He didn't realize I wasn't chasing anymore. I was following coordinates straight to the truth. Back home, I waited until midnight. Lila's breathing upstairs was uneven, restless. I stepped quietly into the garage, opened the storage cabinet, and uncovered the old surveillance gear from my service days. A long-range field mic, camera lenses, scrambler phone. I attached the mic near the kitchen vent that carried sound straight from the bedroom above. Part of me hated doing it, but love had no meaning when the person you trusted might have buried your child. As dawn crept in, her voice whispered through the receiver. Not crying this time, whispering. He's getting too close. Yes, I know what he's capable of. You don't understand. He'll find out everything. A man's voice, low and confident, responded faintly on speaker. Couldn't catch every word, but one line froze me. Relax, Lila. He's predictable. The soldier still believes in justice, she said. And if he doesn't stop? He laughed softly. Then we remind him what's left to lose. Static followed. Then silence. I unplugged the receiver and sat motionless for a long time. The air in the room felt wrong. Too thick, too heavy, as if the house itself knew what had been said. Outside the window, morning sunlight touched the photo of Logan on the mantel, his grin forever unknowing. By evening, I drove out to the edge of the city where an old warehouse district still rotted along the docks. Grant had once used one of those buildings as a safe point. I waited inside my car, engine off, watching the entrance. At 10 p.m., headlights appeared. A black SUV, the same one. Two figures stepped out, looking cautious. They weren't expecting me in the shadows. They moved inside carrying a case. I followed them quietly across the rusted floorboards, breathing through memories of other missions. Inside, I crouched behind a column and listened. One man spoke first, Dominic. She's panicking. She thinks he's starting to suspect her. The second man replied, voice older, sharp. Good. Fear keeps her useful. Once he stops asking questions, we're done here. The file stays buried. File. That word lit up something old inside me. The RTG black file, containing names, operations, witnesses, every detail of missions that were never supposed to exist. They were using her to ensure my silence. Before I could process more, a phone buzzed. Dominic checked the screen, muttered. She called again. Wants to meet. The older man snatched the phone. Tell her nothing. And burn everything after tonight. I slipped away before they saw me, back into the rain. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. Everything made sense now. My son's death wasn't random. It was cover fire. A reminder to keep quiet. A message to a ghost who tried to live normal. But they made a mistake. They left me breathing. I returned home past midnight. The living room lamp glowed faintly. Lila was sitting in silence, eyes hollow. When I entered, she whispered, "Where did you go?" "Out," I said simply. "Out where?" "Somewhere I should have gone a long time ago." She studied me, maybe trying to read what I knew. Neither of us spoke after that. As she walked upstairs, I caught the faintest reflection on her wrist. A charm bracelet I didn't recognize, silver with the same snake emblem carved onto it. She noticed my stare, quickly pulled her sleeve down, and said softly, "Please go to bed. We'll talk in the morning." I nodded, but there would be no morning like she imagined. Because tomorrow, I would reach out to the only person who still operated in shadows deeper than mine, an old intelligence contact who specialized in truth recovery. If the file existed, he'd find it. And once I had it, every mask in my house, every politician, every ghost in my past would burn in daylight. The war was humming again. But this time, it wasn't about vengeance, it was about exposure. Because sometimes justice doesn't come from bullets. It comes from dragging darkness into the open so bright it blinds those who built it. And that was exactly what they feared most. The day started with silence, so thick it buzzed in my ears. Lila moved like a ghost through the house, careful not to look at me, careful with every sound. I didn't speak either. After the night I'd spent hiding in that warehouse, hearing Dominic's voice, hearing the orders, there was nothing left to say that wouldn't bleed. The coffee sat untouched on the counter. She stared at hers, but never drank. When she finally looked up, our eyes met, and for a brief moment, I saw guilt flash behind hers like a lightning strike, trying to hide behind clouds. She asked softly, "Are you going somewhere?" "Yeah," I said, "to find answers." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She knew exactly what I meant. I walked out before she could stall me. By noon, I was back at Julian's office. He looked exhausted, chewing on a pen cap, paperwork stacked like worry all around him. He gestured me inside and closed the blinds. I ran that emblem you gave me, he said. The coiled snake. You were right. It's not gang art. It's an insignia from a defunct Black Ops subdivision. Rumor says they ran contracts long after the official shutdown. My chest tightened. RTG. Julian blinked. You know it. I used to hunt their messes. He leaned forward. Then you already know it's suicide to poke around. Because if they're back operating through street fronts, your son's murder wasn't random. It was scripted. That word, scripted, burned through me. He slid a file toward me. Inside were still images of Dominic with two politicians, both smirking like men certain they'd never face consequence. Julian said, I can't officially touch them, but if you can get proof, audio or visual, I can lock them in and bury them under the system they built. I nodded, jaw tight. I'll get you proof. Back home, the lights were off, curtains drawn. The house smelled faintly of perfume, not Lila's usual scent. It turned my stomach. I heard the creak of the back door as I stepped in. Her voice floated from the dining room, shaky, half-whispered. No, I swear, he doesn't know about the account yet. I'll delete it. Please, Dom, just trust me. I froze. She still wasn't done cleaning her lies. When I entered the room, she dropped the phone instantly, face whitening. Who was that? Nobody. I cut in, calm but sharp. Don't insult me. I've listened to every whisper in this house for days. So try again. Her breathing quickened. It was Dominic. But you don't understand. He threatened me. Did he threaten before or after you met him at that motel last spring? Her lips trembled. She sat down, clutching her robe around her like thin armor. I made a mistake. He promised he could help pay off the debt your business left. My business. You left your career. You left us with secrets. You think walking away erased the people you worked for. She was crying now, voice rising. They came to me when you wouldn't listen. Those words, they came to me, were the knife. You handed them our son, I said quietly. You answered the door to the wolves. I didn't know they'd hurt him. I thought they just wanted leverage. They told me you used to do things overseas, that if I didn't cooperate, they could ruin us. I stepped back, steadying my breath. Rage wasn't a solution anymore. Rage blinded. I needed clarity. So you lied. I tried to fix it, she whispered. But everything spiraled. I walked toward the doorway, but her voice broke behind me. Adrian, please, don't do something that makes you like them. I stopped only long enough to answer. I'm nothing like them. They hide from guilt. I'll make them see it. Then I left. At Grant's garage safe room, the air smelled of oil and dust and old steel. He was loading a handgun, but I pushed it back toward him. I'm not killing anyone, I told him. Not unless I have to. I'm going to bury them with their own dirt. He studied me for a second, then smirked. A proud, almost sad kind of look. Never thought I'd see you use restraint, soldier. But I trust your aim, even without bullets. We mapped the network on the wall using string and photos. Politicians, the transport company, Dominic, the gang front. At the center, that emblem again, circled like a wound. Grant pointed to one photo. This guy, Quentin Vale. Lobbyist, fake charity front. He owns Nine Shore Logistics. The gang does distribution for them. You take this one down, the whole thing collapses. How do I reach him? His charity gala's tomorrow night. I can get you in as security staff. Cameras everywhere. Get something on tape. We leak it. That's your proof. I nodded. Do it. That night, sleep refused to come. I sat in the dark living room, shadows shifting with headlights passing outside. Upstairs, I heard faint sobs. Lila's, desperate but silent. I wanted to hate her enough to feel free, but grief complicated everything. Even now, part of me wanted her to have been tricked, not bought. But the result was the same. Our family was gone, buried next to a boy who had saved her secrets with his silence. I looked at an old picture on the wall. Logan between us at Christmas, his smile wider than the space between our hands. That was before the lies, before the silence. I whispered, I'll fix it, son. I'll clear your name and make them say it out loud. What they did to you. The clock ticks filled the air, slow and relentless. Tomorrow would be the first step into daylight again. The next night, the gala glittered with money and deceit. Polished marble floors reflected gold chandeliers. Men in suits and women in diamonds laughed too easily. I wore a black suit, badge forged, earpiece silent. Grant watched from a car across the street, feeding live audio. At 8:42 p.m., Quentin Vale stepped onto the platform for his speech. Tall, smug, the kind of confidence that comes from never being punished a day in your life. Keep eyes on him, Grant murmured through the earpiece. Dominic's listed as his executive planner. If he shows, we get our link. He did show, 10 minutes later, cutting through the crowd like a shadow dressed in charm. My chest burned, but I stayed still. Dominic shook Quentin's hand, handed him a folder, whispered something that made both men smirk. That was the moment. I slipped closer, phone camera active, recording every visual, every word I could catch. Quentin's voice drifted through the noise. After that little school incident, our friend up north paid double. Good reminder that family leverage still works better than bullets. Every syllable etched itself into evidence. Proof. I walked out before my anger could betray me. Grant's voice broke the silence, low and firm. We got it, brother. This is it. Let me sync the drive and send it to Harper. Driving home, the city lights blurred, but for the first time since the murder, my heart felt something close to clarity. Soon, Logan's name would be more than a tragic headline. It would be justice. When I stepped through the front door, the house smelled of clean linen, like nothing ever happened. Lila stood at the bottom of the stairs, face pale. She asked, "Where were you?" "Out fixing what you broke," I said quietly. Her mouth trembled. "You don't have to do this. They'll kill us." "They already did." She flinched at that, eyes flooding. Then she said something I hadn't expected. "Dominic's dead." The words froze me mid-step. "When? An hour ago. They said it was a robbery. But you and I both know there are no robberies that clean." She looked terrified. "That means they're coming for us next." I stared at her, every instinct alive again. The game had changed. Someone was cutting loose ends. Somewhere out there, a hand was erasing footprints, and ours were last on the path. The call came right after midnight. I had been sitting in the dark again, trying to convince myself that exhaustion wasn't fear. The voice on the other end didn't bother with names, just 6 words that cut deeper than any knife. "He's gone. Dominic's out of the picture." Then the line went dead. I didn't need to ask who it was. The cold tone, the clipped edges, that was RTG command style, the language of ghosts cleaning their mess. When I walked into the kitchen, Lila sat at the counter, still in the clothes from the night before, pale and trembling. "You heard?" she whispered. I nodded slowly. "They killed him," she said, voice breaking. "They'll come for us next. I told them you're not part of this anymore. But you don't understand what these people can do." She didn't. She never would. "I do understand," I said softly. "Because once, I was these people." By the next morning, the city felt sharper, dangerous in its quiet. Julian called asking if I'd seen the news. Dominic Ruiz found dead in his car. No witnesses, no fingerprints, no casing. "Professional," Julian said grimly. He wanted me to lay low. But I was already moving. I met Grant at a rented garage on the south edge of town. He had maps spread across the hood of his truck, circles in red marker around transport routes, storage units, and one familiar name, Nine Shore Logistics. He looked up when I entered. "They're tying off knots. Quinn Vale's cleaning house. Any trace that connects him to RTG or the drug front is disappearing fast." And Dominic was one of their loose ends. Too many secrets. Too much noise. Then what about us? Grant's expression hardened. "Don't flatter yourself, old friend. We're not loose ends yet. We're bait. They're waiting to see how much more you'll dig before they step in." I leaned against the truck, jaw tight. So we make them come to us. Grant frowned. That's suicidal. Maybe, but it's the only way to end this before it reaches anyone else. He sighed. What exactly are you planning? I straightened. Everything they taught me, used against them. That afternoon, I paid an old contact to plan a small report leak online. Nothing flashy, just an anonymous post claiming Nine Shore was laundering money through an offshore military fund labeled under RTG renewal. Enough bait for their surveillance algorithms to notice. Within hours, a black SUV started tailing my car. Same model, same plates changed every few hours. I didn't run. I let them follow. At night, I parked intentionally under the broken streetlight near the bridge, killed the engine, and waited. They parked 50 yards behind. Two figures sat inside. Minutes passed. An hour. Then one finally stepped out, approaching with slow confidence. The street reflected orange from sodium lamps, a tall man with close-cut hair and a steady gaze. Too precise to be street muscle. Military posture. He stopped a few feet short. Mr. Kingston, my boss thinks it's time we talk. Your boss still hiding behind charity dinners? I asked. He smiled faintly. You should be careful what you leak. Signals like that attract the wrong hands. They already have mine. He studied me, then offered a business card with nothing but a phone number and that same snake insignia. Call when you're ready to stop pretending this is about justice. I didn't take it. I walked away once, I said quietly. You people pulled me back by stabbing a child. That ends now. He smirked. Maybe. Or maybe that's just where it begins again. He turned and walked back to the SUV. They left without headlights, vanishing into the dark like ghosts. I knew then they weren't just watching. They were testing my resolve, gauging how much soldier was still left in me. They were about to find out. Back home, Lila sat at the table, staring blankly at a photo album spread open in front of her. Logan's pictures, birthdays, fishing trips, half smiles frozen before disaster. When I entered, she looked up slowly. What are they saying now? That Dominic's death was an accident. Her face twisted. Accident. They carved his name off the earth and called it clean. She wiped her eyes quickly. You're not safe, Adrian. We're not. Maybe we can leave, disappear, start somewhere nobody knows our past. Her words landed like ash. Start over. As if grief was a stain that distance could wash away. I said quietly, you can run if you need to, but they'll always find me. It's built into their system. Unfinished missions follow you home. And what about me? She whispered. You made your deal with them. Now I'll make mine. Her eyes widened, terrified. You'll die? Maybe. I turned to the window, watching lightning streak the horizon. But I'll do it standing. Later that night, I stood outside the small metal shed behind our yard, the one I hadn't entered in years. Inside were the remnants of a man I used to be. A duffel bag, encrypted laptop, field notes, a knife with my cereal scratched off. I carried the bag inside and set it on the kitchen table. Lila stared at it like it was alive. What is that? History, I said. And leverage. Inside that duffel were old RTG operation logs. Personal copies I shouldn't have kept but did. I'd stored them believing one day I might need to defend myself. That day was here. I called Grant. Tell Harper to prepare a warrant. Once I send this, it'll blow their shield wide open. You sure? Grant asked. This puts you right in the crosshairs. I've been in the crosshairs since the day Logan died. I hung up and plugged the drive into my laptop. Files opened like scars. Missions logged under names that no longer existed. Photos of politicians in combat zones they swore they'd never visited. I found a folder labeled Haven Protocol. Inside, timestamped 2 months before Logan's death, read, Subject, Kingston family. Observation required for leverage. Terminate if public exposure risk arises. My throat tightened. It wasn't just random. They planned my son's death as a preemptive control measure. Every nerve in my body went cold. Lila walked closer, whispering, What is it? I turned the screen toward her. She covered her mouth and crumbled into tears. That's what leverage means, I said. You weren't protecting money. You were hiding our names from their list. She shook her head repeatedly. I didn't know. I didn't know this was why. I closed the laptop softly. Now you do. Morning hit with gray clouds curling low over the city. I drove straight to Julian's office, files on a flash drive in my pocket. He met me at the back stairwell instead of his desk this time. Paranoia setting in. Tell me you're not holding what I think you're holding. I am. Everything. The names, the payments, the directive about my family. He looked at me long and hard, then sighed. You realize this isn't just a murder case anymore. It's a covert war between ghosts. Once this goes public, whoever runs that group will throw everything to bury it. Then we leak it faster than they can dig. He rubbed his jaw. There's a federal judge, Fiona Cross. She's clean. If we get this to her, you might actually survive. I nodded. Set it up. That night, I stood once more by Logan's grave. The sky burned orange over the trees. I laid my hand over the dirt, feeling the earth cold and steady. I found them, son, I murmured. But there's one more thing to finish before you can rest. Wind brushed through the grass, faint and steady, like a reply I wanted to believe was real. As I turned to leave, I noticed movement beyond the fence, a shadow near the trees, watching. Not moving, not hiding. Just there, like an echo of the man I'd been chasing since day one. He raised 2 fingers to his forehead in a silent salute and melted back into the dark. The next day, Julian called from a blocked number. Judge Cross will see you tonight. Private hearing. Don't be late. I started the car, glancing once more at the house behind me. Lila stood in the doorway, pale but calm, holding the photo of Logan against her chest. For the first time in weeks, she didn't cry. She just whispered something I couldn't hear, and I drove into the rain. This mission wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about letting truth stand where my son could not. And this time, I didn't need weapons. I had something far stronger, evidence and grief sharpened into justice. The courthouse lights glowed faint and sterile, like the world had forgotten warmth. Judge Fiona Cross's chambers weren't grand, just quiet, wrapped in dark wood and stale air that smelled of coffee and caution. She sat behind a desk stacked with files, gold pin motionless between her fingers. Julian stood by the door while I placed the flash drive on her table. She stared at it like it weighed more than a gun. You understand what this is, Mr. Kingston? She asked. Everything they've hidden, and everything they killed my son to protect. She inserted the drive into her secure laptop. The screen flickered, and file names began to scroll. Half of them marked confidential internal OPS. Her expression changed from skepticism to horror as she read. Dear God, half these directives came from defense contractors. I can trace 3 sitting officials in this mess. They'll close it before sunrise if you don't act now, Julian warned. She nodded grimly. I'll issue an emergency injunction and send it straight to the Attorney General's secure line. But Adrian, she met my eyes. Once this goes live, you lose any chance of a normal life. I smiled faintly, the kind a soldier carries when normal died long ago. That's already gone. By the time I drove home, dawn had begun bleeding into the city skyline. For a brief second, I allowed myself to hope that maybe this time truth would survive daylight. Then I saw the front door hanging open. Inside, chaos. Furniture overturned, drawers ripped out, glass shattered. The smell of smoke and perfume merged into something metallic and cruel. Lila. No answer. I followed the sound, faint static humming from the living room. A small TV I didn't own sat propped on a table, black screen glowing with a single image. A live feed of Lila, bound to a chair in some dim warehouse. A man's voice filled the room, calm, amused. You should have stayed buried, soldier. Now you'll pay for the family twice. The screen cut to static. My pulse slammed against my ribs. They wouldn't kill her yet, not until they erased the evidence. I grabbed my phone. Julian's line went straight to voicemail. Grant's number 2. Every contact blocked. They were moving faster than we predicted. My eyes landed on the small GPS tracker Grant had given me weeks ago, disguised as a keychain. I pressed it. Nothing. The battery was dead. But one memory sparked in my mind. The industrial district near the river, the same logo spray painted on a rusted gate that Dominic once used for exchanges. If I were them, that's where I'd stage the cleanup. I grabbed my jacket and an old flashbang from the duffel, one last fragment of my past I swore never to touch again, and drove. The warehouse loomed in fog, silent except for the grind of distant machinery. I parked 2 blocks away, slipped through a broken fence, and moved like an old habit that had been waiting to wake. Inside, dim floodlights hung from rafters, painting the concrete in sick yellow. Lila sat in the center, wrists tied, duct tape across her mouth, eyes wild with terror. 2 men patrolled, automatic weapons resting lazy at their sides, overconfident. They didn't expect the ghost of RTG walking back through their door. I waited for the rhythm of their steps, timed their lanes, then rolled the flashbang across the floor. It exploded in a burst of blinding white. The men shouted, stumbling. I moved fast, 2 strides in, a strike to one's throat, shoved to the other, sending his weapon skidding. Silence followed their collapse. Lila flinched backward, crying under the tape. I cut her wrists loose, peeled it away. Are you hurt? She shook her head, breath trembling. They said they'd kill you if I screamed. They wanted the files. They won't get them. Before she could speak again, headlights flooded through the broken doorway outside. More engines. More soldiers. I grabbed her hand. We've got 30 seconds. Move. We slipped through a side door into the ring. Tires screeched behind us, voices shouting orders. I pushed her ahead toward an alley that opened behind the rail tracks. Gunfire cracked through the air, wild, desperate. A bullet scraped concrete near my shoulder. Sparks jumped like lightning. My pulse synced with the chaos, mind calculating paths automatically. We darted through the maze of shipping containers, breath heavy. Halfway through, a voice boomed from the dark. Kingston, you think uploading files fixes guilt? You trained us. You made us. Ryder Thomas stepped out from behind a crate, no longer the punk gang leader, but armored now, eyes dead calm. The boy I had once trained to stay unnoticed was now leading the cleanup crew. You're behind this. I demanded, anger rising. I'm a product, he said coldly. Just like you. They sent me to teach you what happens when ghosts break rank. You killed my son. He tilted his head. Collateral damage. But don't worry, he died quick. Something broke loose inside me. I lunged first. He was fast, but I was faster. We collided, trading blows that echoed against steel. The old instincts weren't gone. They'd just been asleep. We fell hard against a container, rain mixing with blood and rust. He swung a knife. I caught his wrist, twisted until bone cracked. The blade dropped. He gasped, hatred blazing through pain. I grabbed his jacket collar. You wanted to deliver a message? Consider it received. He spat blood. You think this ends with me? No, I said. It ends when you tell them who sent you. He laughed, a bitter, dying sound. You already know the name. Before I could press harder, headlights swept across the yard, backup arriving. Strings of black SUVs, silhouettes with rifles stepping out. I pulled Lila behind me and fired the flashbang again. In the blinding storm of light and panic, we ran, straight, toward the canal bridge. Bullets snapped past our legs. Then, distant police sirens rose like salvation. Julian's voice shouted through a loudspeaker. Drop your weapons. Hands where I can see them. Finally, the law had caught up. Ryder and his men froze. I grabbed Lila's arm and surrendered, exhausted, soaked, shaking. Hours later, in an interrogation room washed in gray light, Julian stood across from me. He looked older, worn but alive. You just took down half of RTG's domestic branch, he said quietly. How the hell did you think this would end? With my son's name off every file that made him a target. He nodded slowly. Judge Cross received the uploads before they hit you. The courts are locking down indictments as we speak. The fallout will be ugly. But you did it. Lila sat nearby, silent, staring at her bruised wrists. Julian added, she'll need protection. They'll come for her again when the next layer cracks. I looked at her. All the lies, the fear, and something small like regret deep in her eyes. She's still my son's mother, I said softly. Keep her safe. He hesitated. And you? I don't need saving. As dawn broke over the precinct windows, I walked outside alone. Rain had stopped, mist curling along the street. Somewhere behind me, alarms whined in the city, the sound of a network collapsing under its own corruption. I knew it wasn't over. There were always more names, higher layers. But Logan's story was no longer buried. And that was enough for now. I whispered to the gray sky, "Rest easy, kid. The war's not over, but your part is done." The morning breeze carried nothing back, only a strange, quiet peace. It had been 24 hours since the raid, and the city hadn't slept. Every news channel flashed with words like shock, conspiracy, classified leak. Photos of armored agents dragging out black duffels, government officials walking past cameras with blank faces, and one headline that froze me mid-step. Black Ops officer exposes secret kill program. They were talking about me, though they didn't use my name. Yet, I sat in Julian's office watching the footage in silence. The glow from the screen painted his face pale. Outside, chaos scratched through the glass. Reporters shouting, sirens blaring, truth clawing its way out of the dark. Julian switched off the TV. You understand what happens next. I become the liability, I said quietly. He sighed. They'll spin this so you look like the rogue who snapped. Half the country will call you a hero. The other half will call you a traitor. I can live with both, I murmured. Can you? I didn't answer. I just stared at the half-empty coffee cup on his desk. I could still smell gunpowder on my own sleeves. The war was supposed to be over, but I was still breathing like I was in combat, always listening for a sound behind the sound. Julian looked down at the file in his hands. Judge Cross called this morning. She wants to see you again before this goes public. Says there's pressure building from above, names she's not even allowed to read out loud. Pressure never stays quiet long, I said. Eventually, it explodes. That night, I met Judge Fiona Cross in a secure office under federal custody, flanked by guards who looked more scared than loyal. The exhaustion in her eyes said she'd seen too much truth in too little time. You turned this country upside down in 48 hours, she said softly as I entered. Wasn't the country, I told her, just the rot inside it. She studied me, eyes that could read guilt faster than files. You remind me of my brother, she said quietly. He was a soldier, too. Came home from Kandahar and never found peace. There's no peace to find, I said. Only pauses. She nodded as if she already knew that answer. Then she slid a new document toward me. We've arrested 13 people so far, but one name here should worry you. I scanned the page, Grant Weston. My chest tightened. Your old friend, she said gently. He turned himself in this morning. Said he had something to confess. What did he say? She hesitated. That he leaked part of the operation list months ago to someone he thought was working on an investigation. Turns out, that person worked for RTG's upper management. It hit like betrayal wrapped in confusion. Grant wasn't my enemy, not intentionally. But his mistake had painted the target on my son's back long before either of us realized. Where is he now? I asked. In federal detention. He refused a lawyer. Said he only wanted to speak to you. The cell block smelled of concrete and regret. Grant sat behind reinforced glass, wrists bound, eyes sunken deep into shadow. When he looked up, he smiled weakly. You always were too stubborn to die, he said. And you were always too loyal for your own good, I answered. He exhaled, shaking his head. I didn't know, Adrian. I swear I didn't know. I thought I was sending data to a cleanup commission, trying to free guys like us from blackmail. Didn't realize I was handing it to the same devils wearing new suits. I felt anger rise, but forced it down. They used your leak as justification for surveillance. Logan's name hit their list because of that file. His eyes closed, pain ripping through him silently. Then the blood's on me. It's on all of us, I said quietly. You can still help me finish what's left. He looked confused. Finish how? Testimony. Sworn statement. You tell Cross everything. Every code, alias, shell company. You tie the whole structure together so they can't rebuild. Grant looked down at his bruised hands. If I talk, they'll kill me before trial. I leaned closer to the glass. Then make it worth dying for. He stared at me for a long time, then finally nodded. Tell Lila I'm sorry too. I dragged our ghosts back. Now you carry the weight. You don't owe me sorry, I said. You just owe the truth. When the guards took him away, I knew that would be the last time I saw him alive. 2 days later, Judge Cross convened a sealed court session. Whistleblower testimony, hidden from public eyes. Grant never made it to the chamber. His transport then caught fire 10 miles outside town. Brake malfunction, the report said. But soldiers learn to smell lies the way wolves smell blood. When I got the call, I stood there for a long time without speaking. Another name burned away. Another piece of history erased to protect a lie that was already half dead. Julian found me outside the station. Grant's gone, he said softly. I know. He lit a cigarette, hands trembling slightly. The judge is pushing through emergency witness protection for your wife. She'll be sent out of state under a new name. You're not listed. She said you wouldn't accept anyway. I nodded slowly. Lila deserves quiet, even if it's without me. What about you? He asked. I have one thing left, I told him. Grant's death cost something. I won't waste it. Night folded over the city like a heavy blanket. I walked the streets until the noise faded and the air tasted of salt from the bay. The empty pier where I used to take Logan for fishing stood ghostly under a flickering light. For the first time in years, I let myself breathe without purpose. Then I heard footsteps. Slow, measured, confident. A tall figure appeared from behind the old supply shed, dark coat, hands in pockets. Not a street punk, not a cop. He spoke with calm certainty. Judge Cross won't make it through the week. You should stop pretending justice is bulletproof. Every instinct flared. My hand moved automatically to the weapon under my jacket. He continued, we don't need to kill you anymore, Kingston. The narrative will. One headline at a time. Who sent you? He smiled thinly. Doesn't matter. They don't use names anymore. Just objectives. Before I could move, he melted back into the dark, gone like smoke. The next morning, the news hit. Judge Fiona Cross hospitalized after car explosion outside her residence. She survived, barely. That meant one thing. They were bluffing, scared. And when the powerful get scared, they make mistakes. I stood by the window of Julian's office as lightning cracked over the skyline. The city felt fragile, trembling on the edge of something larger. Julian came up beside me. They won't stop. I know. And you won't run. I can't. Thunder rolled across the horizon. I looked at him and said, then we turn their fear into evidence. We make them chase a ghost until they fall into their own grave. That night, I wrote a letter addressed only to Logan Kingston. In it, I told him everything. About Grant, about the lies, about how silence had once seemed safer than truth, and how wrong I'd been. I folded it gently, slipped it into an envelope, and left it at the base of the memorial near his school. Maybe someone would find it someday and understand that vengeance isn't fire. It's memory that refuses to die quietly. Then I walked away into rain that tasted like ash and salt. I didn't know who would fall next, only that the storm had started moving, and this time, I wasn't planning to hide under any roof. 3 weeks passed, but sleep never came back. Every night I closed my eyes, I saw security footage, my son outside the school gate, the SUV, the shadow that took everything from us. There's no escape from truth once you've unburied it. Julian kept moving me between motels. Said it was protocol. It felt like exile. The TV stayed muted, showing endless panels debating whether I was a patriot or a murderer. The country didn't know what to do with men like me. Too dangerous to worship, too guilty to forget. One night, halfway through a storm, my burner phone buzzed. Private signal, coded tone, it wasn't Julian. I answered. Adrian Kingston, A tense voice rasped, "You don't know me, but I know what they did to your son. Meet me at the old apartment complex on Bay Ridge 9. Third floor, room 214. Who is this? Someone who used to follow orders like you. Until I broke them." The line cut. Part of me knew it was bait. Another part didn't care. The ghosts had taken enough. Now they wanted the rest. I grabbed my jacket, left the motel key on the counter, and drove. Bay Ridge 9 was a concrete skeleton, long abandoned, graffiti, broken glass, doors hanging off hinges. Rain drizzled through a hole in the ceiling as I climbed the stairs. Room 214's door stood ajar, a dim glow leaking out. I stepped inside slow, gun low, breath steady. A man sat in the corner, gaunt, scar across his jaw, eyes hollow but sharp. A pistol rested beside an open laptop. He raised his empty hands. "I'm not here to fight, Kingston. Just to tell you what they won't." Name: Evan Cordell. RTG Logistics. Where I was, until I saw a file labeled Haven Protocol. It listed surveillance targets, potential leverage. Mostly families of field agents considered disposable. Disposable, I echoed. The word tasted like blood. He nodded. "Your name wasn't supposed to be on it. But when your wife contacted a middleman to clear your debt, she used your clearance ID as guarantee. That's how they found your family. Lila's debt. My clearance. My son." He slid a small flash drive across the floor. "Everything I copied before they scrubbed me. It ties live officials to those contracts. Names that never appear in the files you already leaked." I crouched, picked it up, examining the engraved serial code along its edge, identical to RTG's internal encryption pattern. It was real. Evan took a shuddered breath. "You think justice is coming, but they're still out there. Ones who haven't surfaced yet. They'll adapt. They always do. Then we don't give them time." He shook his head. "You'll need more than truth to stop them. You'll need witnesses. Everyone willing to testify is dead," I said. "Not everyone," he murmured. "One of their analysts survived the first purge. She's in protection under a fake name. Fiona sent her away months ago. That name, Fiona Cross. The judge who survived the explosion." A pulse of realization hit me. She'd moved her key witness before the blast. She'd known this wasn't over. Evan continued. "She goes by Ruby Grant now. If you find her, she can confirm everything." Before I could ask more, the window shattered, a single suppressed shot. Evan jerked backward, blood blooming across his chest. "Down!" I shouted, firing through the broken glass. A figure fled into the rain. Too late. I turned to Evan. He was fading fast, whispering one final word, "Finish it," and then nothing. I left everything but the drive. Rain poured harder as I crossed the rooftop, adrenaline dulling grief. Whoever pulled that trigger wouldn't stay hidden long. Chaos leaves footprints. At dawn, I reached Julian's safe house. He looked worn, eyes red from no sleep, tie loose. "You look like hell," he said. "Tell me about Judge Cross's missing witness," I replied. He froze. "Where'd you hear that?" "Bay Ridge. A man named Evan just died giving me this." I dropped the drive on the table. Julian hesitated, then exhaled. "Cross told me to keep her identity off the record. The woman was part of RTG's accounting desk. She handled financial trails that tied directly to several military contractors. When the explosion failed, Cross smuggled her out west under a new life. Even I don't know exactly where. How do we find her?" "She left breadcrumbs. Weekly deposits from an unregistered federal stipend, all channeled through a small-town bank in Arizona. If you track it, you'll find her." "I'm going." Julian frowned. "You can't keep running solo. They've already burned 3 of your allies. You're next." "I'm not running," I said quietly. "I'm finishing this." He shook his head. "Then take this." He handed me a gun, smaller, newer, worn grip. "Don't pretend you're done being what you are. Sometimes truth needs teeth." The drive from the coast to the desert felt endless. Asphalt stretching through silence, mind looping through memories of Logan and the way revenge changes shape every time you think it's done forming. I told myself I was chasing justice, but deep down, I knew I just couldn't stand still. Stillness meant remembering. By the time I reached Arizona, the night bled gold across endless flat clouds. The town was small, one diner, one sheriff, and a bank that looked like it hadn't changed since the 70s. I parked by the corner and walked inside. A young teller greeted me with a nervous smile. "Morning, sir. How can I help?" "I'm looking for a woman named Ruby Grant." I handed her a photo of the old RTG payroll roster with the name highlighted. She frowned. "Don't know that name. But we do have a Mrs. R. G. Thorne who deposits every Friday. Usually arrives early." "When's the next deposit?" She checked the schedule. "Tomorrow morning." That night, I booked a room at the edge of town and tried not to think about what would happen if I actually found her. Bringing her back into the fight meant dragging another innocent into danger. But I needed her testimony. Without it, every death so far would be meaningless. Sometime past midnight, headlights swept across my motel window, just one car slowing down, then continuing. Maybe paranoia, maybe not. I sat by the window, gun within reach, eyes fixed on the darkness until dawn painted the horizon in dull orange. At 7 sharp, the same pickup pulled up to the bank. A woman stepped out, mid-30s, brown hair tied back, sunglasses despite the dim morning. She moved with caution that only fear teaches. I approached slowly. "Ruby." She froze. "You have the wrong person." "I don't." I held up the flash drive. "Judge Cross sent me." Her eyes widened at the name, then softened. "How did you find me?" "Your deposits. And a man died last night protecting this." She looked down, her hands twisting nervously. "If you know what's on that drive, you should burn it. They already erased half the people it names. Once they know you're with me, they'll finish the rest." "They're already trying," I said. "But you can help end it." She studied me for a long time, then nodded. "There's a safe address in New Mexico where I kept duplicates. Everything Judge Cross needed before she vanished. If you want to expose them all, that's your next stop." "Then we leave now," I said. Before we could move, a black SUV turned the corner, too fast, too deliberate. Ruby's face drained of color. "They found me," she whispered. "Get in the truck," I ordered. We jumped in as the SUV screeched to a stop. Tires screamed, engines roared, gunfire shattered glass. I floored the gas, the pickup fishtailing onto the highway. Bullets cracked through the rear window. Ruby clutched the flash drive. "There's another copy hidden in New Mexico. If we reach it, none of this will be for nothing." "Hold on," I growled, weaving through traffic, adrenaline drowning thought. Behind us, black smoke from burning tires rose like the storm returning for its second act. I didn't look back. There was no point anymore. Every ghost in my life was already riding with us, and we weren't done yet. The highway twisted south for 200 miles before the desert opened its arms and swallowed asphalt into heat. Wind carried dust across faded signs that led nowhere. The longer we drove, the less the world felt real, just sand, sky, and guilt sliding past in silence. Ruby sat beside me clutching that flash drive like it held salvation. Her eyes kept flicking to the rearview mirror. The black SUV had fallen back after the state line, maybe regrouping, maybe radioing for backup. We both knew it wasn't over. At sundown, we turned off onto a dirt road that led toward a scattering of half-collapsed sheds. "Old mining station," she said. "Under the floorboard of the main office, metal case. That's where the duplicates are." The place smelled of rust and isolation. Perfect hiding spot. We stepped inside, flashlights cutting through years of dust. Ruby dropped to her knees, prying at warped boards until metal clanged softly. She pulled up a small steel box etched with red marker scrawls, proof of ghosts. She handed it to me. "Inside are 2 drives. One of them has names that never hit your version. The ones truly behind it. Judges, oil execs, even senators." I stared at the box. So small and yet heavier than war. "Why give this to me?" "Because you're the only one mad enough to use it," she said. Before I could reply, Footsteps scraped behind us. "Easy, soldier." Julian's voice echoed from the doorway. I turned, flashlight catching his badge glint before his face. But something was off in his tone, too calm. "How did you find us?" He shrugged. "You were broadcasting every 10 miles. Old habits die hard." Ruby stiffened. "You weren't supposed to come." Julian ignored her. "Hand me the box, Adrian." "What?" "You can't imagine who's crawling out of Washington tonight," he said slowly. "If we release those names now, half the government collapses. It'll cause riots, mass resignations, maybe even civil action. We need to filter it." I studied him. Filter means bury. It means protect innocent people who'll get caught in the fallout. There are no innocent people in those files. His eyes hardened. "Don't force me, brother." I realized then he wasn't bluffing. Julian wasn't loyal to RTG, but he was still a system man, bound to rules built by devils. I took one small step back. "You know what this cost, how many we buried to reach this moment." "I know you lost your son," he whispered. "And I won't let you lose what's left of the country too." Ruby moved behind a desk, trembling. "He's compromised, Adrian." They turned him. Julian swung the gun from me to her in an instant. "Shut up. Drop it," I said, voice flat, trained. He laughed bitterly. "Funny. 10 years ago, we were on the same trigger line saying the same thing. Then finish it the same way, by not shooting a civilian." For half a second, silence held like thin glass. Then Ruby lunged sideways, knocking over the metal box. The lid flipped open, papers scattered. I dove forward, grabbing the box, shouting, "Run!" Julian fired once. The bullet missed Ruby by inches, ricocheting into the wall. I slammed my shoulder into him. The gun dropped. We struggled in the narrow room, boots grinding against splinters. Then another sound, engines roaring outside, spotlights sweeping in. Black SUVs. Again. "Damn it, they tracked you." Julian coughed. "You led them right here." He pushed away and grabbed his radio. "This is Harper. We're under assault." Bullets tore through the windows. Sand exploded in bursts outside. Ruby screamed. "Forget the call. They're jamming everything." I yelled. Julian ducked near the desk, firing blind out the window. "Now you understand why I said don't leak it. They'll kill us all before truth even leaves the desert." I knelt beside Ruby, who clutched her arm, grazed but alive. We moved. We blasted through a side door as gunfire stitched the walls. My truck waited 20 feet across open ground. The only cover, falling darkness. Julian yelled over the gunfire. "Take the files. I'll hold them." He fired again, drawing their attention. I hesitated. Part of me still trusted him. Part of me didn't. Then Ruby grabbed my hand. "He's buying seconds, not salvation. Go." We sprinted. Dust rose, bullets hissed. I flung open the driver's door, shoved Ruby inside, dug behind the wheel, and slammed the gas. The truck roared, fishtailing over gravel. Behind us, the building erupted in flame. Not from bullets, from charges planted before we got there. Julian gone. The explosion painted the sky orange and black. For a moment, I thought I heard his voice crackle through the radio. "Finish it, Adrian." Before static swallowed it. Ruby's tears blurred her voice. "He's dead, isn't he?" "Everyone who stood too close to the truth dies," I said quietly. "But we're still breathing. That means their turn hasn't ended." We drove until dawn. The box sat between us, rattling softly over each bump, louder than the engine, heavier than silence. Ruby clenched her jaw. "You could still turn back. Give this to the press like before, watch the chaos from afar." "No," I said. "Press bends for power. I'll deliver it directly to the one person still unbent. Judge Cross. She's under medical protection. If she's conscious, she'll certify this for global release. Everything unredacted. And if she's not, then I show the whole world myself." We stopped when the sun cleared the horizon. The desert glowed red like a wound healing too slow. Ruby whispered, "Do you ever sleep?" "I try," I said. "But every time I close my eyes, I see him, waiting at the school gate. wondering if I'd show up early that day. She looked out the window, voice trembling. You're doing this for more than him now. I nodded. Because the next parent shouldn't have to. By midday, we reached the outskirts of another small town. Gas station, diner, nothing else. I stepped out to make a call through a satellite relay Julian gave me before the betrayal. Static turned into faint connection. Judge Cross's voice, weak but alive. Kingston? It's me. I have the final files. Her breath hitched. Then listen carefully, she said, words broken by monitor beeps in the background. You can't bring them here. The hospital isn't safe anymore. There's a backup transport headed south to the courthouse in Santa Rosa. Get there before they do. How long do I have? She coughed. 4 hours, maybe less. They'll intercept you. I made sure the leak was predictable. It's the only way they'll follow your trail instead of mine. You used me as bait. It's the only chance left for the truth to survive you. The line went dead. Ruby met my eyes. What did she say? We're trading roads with ghosts again, I answered. She frowned. Meaning the judge wants us chased, so she can move unseen. They'll think we hold the master copy, which means they'll come for us. She slumped in the seat. And if they catch us? I looked down at the metal box. Then we make sure the story dies in daylight, not darkness. By late afternoon, the horizon shimmered with mirages and heat. I could feel engines behind us again, faint at first, then louder. Black dots cutting through the dust. Ruby tightened her grip on the box. There's too many. I smiled without humor. Always have been. One last storm coming. And this time, I wasn't running for survival. I was driving straight into the final trade, truth for peace. For Logan. For every name buried in silence. Whatever waited at the end of that road, bullets, fire, judgment, it didn't matter anymore. The story would end free. The sun sank low behind the mountains as the road straightened into an endless corridor of red light and dust. It looked almost peaceful, the way endings sometimes do before they show their teeth. For a few minutes, Ruby and I didn't speak. The wind through the cracked window carried only the engine's dry hum and the faint rattle of the steel box between us, the weight of every hidden truth we'd dragged this far. Ahead, a green highway sign flickered through the haze. Santa Rosa, 42 miles. Ruby glanced over. If we make it there, what then? Cross gets the files, I said quietly. And the world sees what it's been paying to keep silent. And if she doesn't make it? I tightened my hands on the wheel. Then I'll make sure someone else does. She looked away, knowing there was no comfort left to give. 40 miles out, the horizon shimmered. Too much mirage movement. I knew that look. Engines hiding beneath heat. Without warning, 4 dark vehicles burst from the dunes, fanning across the desert like a black wave. Hold on. I muttered, spinning the wheel hard toward an old service path off the main road. The pickup jolted, sand exploding around us. Behind, the convoy split. 2 followed straight, 2 cutting ahead to intercept. Ruby clutched the dashboard. We can't outrun them. Who's trying to outrun? The trail sloped down to an abandoned construction site, skeletal frames and rusted metal. Perfect terrain for ghosts who never learned to die. I killed the headlights and braked behind a half-dismantled crane. Engines roared above, headlights slicing shadows. They'll sweep the area, Ruby whispered. Let them, I said. They think I'm still the man who shoots first. I climbed out quietly, motioning her to stay low. The wind carried the smell of oil and lightning, storm brewing somewhere out west. 2 soldiers in tactical vests moved along the ridge, rifles ready. They were too loud, overconfident. I watched their movements through the cracked mirror on my truck door. The reflection gave me just enough edge. When they passed, I slipped behind them, using the metal debris as cover. One turned. I swung fast, knocking the gun aside, slamming him into a beam. The second spun, firing wild. I ducked, the shot tearing through air, then caught him with a blow that folded him into the sand. Their radios hissed. Status? A voice demanded. I grabbed the mic, target secured. The reply came instantly, rough and angry. Then bring him in. No more games. Perfect. I looked toward Ruby, signaling. She nodded, understanding the plan before I could explain it. We dragged one of the unconscious men into the truck bed, posing him slumped against the tailgate. Enough confusion for 5 seconds of distraction. I started the engine again, headlights off, rolling slow toward the ridge where the rest waited. The lead SUV was parked near a half-fallen structure. A silhouette stood beside it, tall, coat whipping in the wind. When I pulled closer, the man turned, and even in the dim light, I recognized him. Ryder Thomas. Still alive. Somehow. He was scarred now, left eye clouded, but standing straight. You thought you finished this, didn't you? He called over the wind. Truth has too many heads to cut. You're still cleaning your master's mess, I said. They're not my masters anymore. They're yours. You just don't see it. They need villains, Adrian. Men like us feed their stories. You expose them, they crown you monster. Either way, they win. His words stung because they rang true. You killed my son, I said. He smiled faintly. You raised an enemy's weapon under your own roof. You think the boy was innocent? He was helping her, your wife, move data. She sold his access, didn't she tell you? That's how the files spread in the first place. The world tilted. Grass ripped from the soil under my boots. Ruby gasped behind me. She didn't know what they'd do to him. I managed. She knew enough, Ryder said, voice almost gentle. That's why she disappeared before the funerals were done. Why the safe house missed one witness. You're lying. He gestured toward the convoy. Look in the last car. She's been with us since the border, in protective custody they called it. Every nerve in me shut down. The last SUV door opened, and out stepped Lila, hands bound, hair tangled, eyes full of things I didn't yet understand. Adrian, she started, but Ryder cut her off. She offered you up when your leak got too loud. Bought herself a deal. Only problem, you lived. Lila's tears caught moonlight. It wasn't like that. I was trying to keep them from killing you. I couldn't tell if I was shaking from rage or heartbreak. The two had become the same thing long ago. Ryder raised his gun. Enough talking. Give me the file box, and we end this clean. You walk away. She walks away. World stays asleep. I looked at Ruby. She was trembling, eyes darting between us. Her whisper was barely audible. If you give them the box, it all dies again. The sky darkened fully, thunder growling above the desert. A single drop of rain hit my cheek. I stepped forward. You want it? Catch. I threw the box into the air. Ryder's men turned instinctively, hands up, and that split second was enough. Lightning lit the horizon as I dived, pulling Ruby behind a beam. Gunfire ripped through the storm noise. Ryder shouted, but his men scattered, blinded by dust and rain. One bullet clipped my arm, hot streak burning flesh. I fired back blindly, hitting the engine of the nearest SUV. It exploded, fire eating through oil lines. Screams filled the desert night. Ryder vanished in the chaos, taking Lila with him. Her scream echoing across thunder as the vehicles fled toward the highway. When the rain finally stopped, only one SUV burned, and Ruby knelt beside the scattered papers. Damp, ruined except for 2 drives still sealed inside the steel box. She whispered, "They took her." I nodded, staring into the empty dark road. Then we finally have what they fear most, something worth trading. Ruby looked at me, confusion and exhaustion mixing with dread. Trading? They want silence, I said. I want her alive. For once, I'll make them choose. I picked up the box, loaded the truck, and stepped into the driver's seat. The desert smelled of smoke, iron, and heartbreak. Before Ruby could speak again, I said, "Next time we meet them, don't run. Let them come close. The ghosts deserve to see who buried them." And with that, the truck rolled into what little night remained, toward the final meeting, the final betrayal waiting just over dawn. Dawn found the desert still burning. Smoke from the wrecks rolled low across the valley while the sun rose blood-red behind the mountains. The world smelled of ash and endings. Ruby drove the truck, My arm was useless, wrapped in torn cloth soaked through. Neither of us spoke. Words didn't fit anymore. Only what was left to finish. By mid-morning, we reached the small airstrip outside Santa Rosa. A single plane hangar sat open, wind howling through rusted metal. A figure waited near the runway. Judge Fiona Cross, pale, thin, but alive. She walked toward us, supported by a cane and two marshals. "You made it," she whispered. I handed her the steel box. "Ryder's gone. Lila's with him." Her eyes softened. "She's the last piece they can use against you." "I'm done being used," I said quietly. "But I still need her back. She deserves truth, even if it wrecks her." The judge nodded toward the horizon. "They reached out this morning. Offer of exchange, your wife for what's left of the files." Ruby looked shocked. "It's a trap." "Everything's a trap," I said. "But this one ends either way." We met them outside a wind-torn church at the edge of the county line. The kind of place where even ghosts didn't bother to pray. 3 black cars waited. Ryder stood in front, Lila beside him, wrists free now. Her face hollow, eyes swollen, heart visible through every tremble. He smiled when we approached. "You kept your word. I'll keep mine." I tossed the box onto the ground between us. He kicked it open, scanning quickly, then glanced up. "Real or copy?" "Real enough," I said. He chuckled. "Good. You see, Adrian, some wars never end. They just change uniforms." I looked at Lila. "You okay?" She nodded weakly. "They kept me alive so long as you would come. Then we're both alive for the wrong reasons." Before Ryder could raise his weapon, Judge Cross's convoy appeared over the ridge. Federal vehicles, sirens low, engines flooring through the dust. He turned toward the sound, realizing too late what he was seeing. "Double cross," he hissed. "No," I said. "Justice." The marshals stormed in fast. Ryder fired wild, chaos splitting the air. I dove forward, tackling Lila as bullets split the dirt around us. Ruby ripped open the truck door, returning fire. When the smoke settled, Ryder lay bleeding in the sand, still trying to speak. I knelt beside him. He coughed, smirking. "You really think this ends today?" I looked toward the horizon, Cross's lights flashing blue against dust and blood. "No, but the part that killed my son ends now." He laughed once, then stopped breathing. Lila sat trembling against the fender, whispering broken apologies. I didn't answer. Some truths heal. Some only remind you why you'll never be the same. Cross approached, coat whipping in the wind. "It's over, Adrian. The files are authenticated. The rest will face the law now." I nodded, watching clouds roll past the mountains. "Over is a small word, Judge, but it's enough." Ruby folded her arms, eyes glistening. "So what happens to you?" "I walk," I said, "one step at a time until the daylight feels honest again." That night, I buried the last of the evidence beside Logan's grave, his name carved sharp against the marble, the flowers dry but waiting. I told him everything. About the lies, the betrayal, the blood. About how revenge still felt empty. "Truth doesn't bring anyone back," I whispered, "but it keeps the living from turning into what they hate." The wind moved through the trees like breath, soft and forgiving. For the first time in years, I let the silence live. And now, as the story closes, one question stays with me. If the people you lost could see who you became to get justice, would they still call you family? Think about that. If this story touched you, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. I read each one. It means more than you know. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit subscribe so you never miss the next betrayal, the next redemption, the next fight that ends with peace. Tell me below, what kind of stories move you the most? Love that hurts? Silence that heals? Revenge that changes people instead of killing them? Whatever your truth is, I'll bring those stories for you, one heartbreak, one reckoning at a time. Until the next epic revenge story, take care of your heart. It's the one weapon no one can steal.